and welcome back to my channel. It has been a long old time since I did a sit down video. I can't even remember the last time I did one. But anyway, here I am doing a sit down video with a meet my baby who's just woken up. If you happen to be new around here, hello, my name is Caroline. I have a daughter called Quinn who is 3 months old and a son called Ellis who is 3 years old. So yes, that's exciting. So her name, Quinn, is a little bit of an unusual one. Well, I didn't think it was that unusual actually, to be honest. I thought it was a medium unusual name, not a super unusual name. But every time I've said it to someone, a lot of the responses I get are, Quinn, oh, okay, like they've never heard of it before. I'm not sure if people like it or not, but that's not my business, I don't care. If they do or not, because I love the name, don't I? It's a name that I have had chosen since I was about 21, 22. I have been in love with the name. So the backstory behind the name Quinn is it's very TV based, and so it's a little bit embarrassing, but that's how I found the name. The TV show Dexter, there was a policeman detective on the show whose surname was Quinn, and I really liked the way it sounded. When you're young and you haven't got kids and no kids are planned at all, you know, you think, oh, that's a nice name, and then you carry on with your life. So then fast forward a year or so, and then Glee comes out, and of course the main character female in Glee is called Quinn. And I think that's what planted the seed in my head, where I was just like, oh my god, the name Quinn can be used for a first name, first of all, and it's not unheard of to be, you know, a girl's first name either, because I thought it was more of a sort of a masculine name at first. And then seeing a cheerleader on an American TV show called Quinn, I was like, I love the name. And so from then on, it's always been my #1 girl's name. Thankfully, Sean was on board with the name Quinn as well, because a little bit different. And then Rose is Sean's grandma's name. So we've got her middle name is after her great-grandma, and Ellis is after, so just if you didn't know as well, my son Ellis, his middle name is Richard, which is my dad's name. So we like to keep family names within our kids' names. And so yeah, Quinn Rose, that's your name, isn't it? Say hello. She has blue eyes, as you can see, and I think they might stay blue. Ellis has blue eyes, so I'm thinking hers are very, very blue, so I think they might be sticking. And her hair, at the minute, she hasn't got much, which surprised me a lot, because Ellis was born with tons of hair. And so when she came out bald, I was absolutely bamboozled. I thought, that's not right. Surely she should have lots of hair, because my kids have lots of hair. Yeah, she hasn't got that much, but it's starting to go a bit orangey. But I'm not 100% if that's going to stick. A lot of people think that she is going to be a ginger. What do you think? Oh, it is very orangey. But then Ellis had a slight tinge of orange in his hair, but he's now gone blonde, probably will be a brunette like Sean is. But yeah, it'd be good if Quinn could have my colour hair, because that would be fun. Because I've got brown eyes and this colour hair, so it'd be interesting to see what blue eyes and this colour hair would look like as a combo. Yes! She definitely has Ellis's frown. She's very good with the strong eyebrows, which is a theme clearly with my kids. Strong eyebrow, but she doesn't look as much like me as Ellis did when he was her age. Feeding wise, I've written my notes down on my phone. Feeding, we are breastfeeding and it's going well. She had a tongue tie at the beginning. I knew something was up when we first started feeding, because she was dribbling a lot. Like it was when she was feeding, there was a lot of milk coming out the other side, so like, you know, where she was positioned, a lot of milk was coming out, so she wasn't latching on properly. She does have a lip tie, which isn't so prominent now, but when she was very little, you could really see her lip tie was and the gum are tied together, and they can't do anything about that. I spoke to the midwife who cut her tongue tie, that she said that you can't do anything about lip tie, you just have to live with it, and hopefully it will break itself, which sounds a bit miserable. Oopsie! She had a tongue tie. We had that snipped at a couple of weeks old, which wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be a lot of shouting and a lot of crying, but apparently you haven't got any nerves under your tongue, so when she snipped it, there was only a little bit of a cry because of obviously blood in her mouth, but apart from that, she's been absolutely fine. And since that's happened, breastfeeding has been great, no concerns there. What's she like as a person? What are you like? Well, she's very strong. Very strong. She has a good set of legs on her. She sleeps fine. I mean, she's 3 months old. She's coming into the waking up phase of life where the sleeping all day is no longer, and it's more of blocks will be emerging soon. I assume at the minute it's sort of just like as and when she feels like it, but I'm thinking, fingers crossed, we'll get some sort of like understanding of when she needs to sleep. And I have introduced a dummy very early. I didn't do this with Ellis because I was very anti-dummy before I had kids, and then I had Ellis and was like, he needs a dummy at 6 months old. I was just like, you know what, just give her the dummy now, and that's that, I don't care, we'll just do the dummy. I was anti-dummy because I didn't understand what a dummy was. It is a comfort when my body does not want to be the comfort anymore. And we are back, aren't we? I'm just checking the weather outside. We've got washing out on the line. I don't want it to rain. It looks very grey, but I think it's okay. Temperament-wise, well, I wouldn't expect anything different from my children. She is a drama queen. The screaming this girl can produce is actually quite impressive. Ella's never screamed. He shouted a lot. She does both. Some of the screaming she does when we're changing her nappy, for example, she has a good set of lungs on her. And so, yes, that's interesting. It is hilarious because, you know, you're just changing a nappy and then she will scream like she wants the whole neighbourhood to hear. Yeah, that's Quinn, baby girl. And then, oh yeah, and I guess I will say actually, we didn't know the sex of her when I was pregnant. We didn't know that she was going to be a girl. I was so sure she would be a boy just because Sean is one of 4 boys. And so I just thought we obviously had a good strong male gene within the family. So I just assumed that's what would happen. The midwife said to me, do you want us to tell you what the gender is of your... So would you want us to tell you what your baby is, or do you want your husband to tell you, or do you want to find out? So I said, oh yeah. So I said, I want Sean to tell me. So obviously when they're born, that Sean can then tell me, oh, we've got a boy or a girl. Well, Sean was so busy focusing, I guess, on the birth aspect of it, that when she was handed to me, he didn't even see what she was, because they just handed her straight to me, as they do, and I just saw... The first thing I pretty much saw, apart from her face instantly, and then literally her groin was sort of at my eye level the whole time, and I was just like, it's a girl! I can't believe it! And I did actually ask Sean about 3 or 4 times to double check there was definitely a girl. High on adrenaline and the shock of it all, and obviously the umbilical cord. I just wanted to make sure that I hadn't like imagined that it was a girl. Let's talk about my birth, shall we? My birth. Your birth, my labour. Let's go back 3 years very quickly. I had a cesarean 3 years ago. My son Ellis was back to back, which is not the correct way to be when you're giving birth. Ellis was facing upwards inside my womb, inside my stomach, and he should be facing downwards for easy exits. And because he was facing upwards, my labour wasn't progressing very quickly. It was slow and more painful than it needed to be. And he had also pooped in the womb, which meant that obviously it's a worry because if he ingests any of that poo, it could cause severe damage to him. So because of those things mixed together, I insisted I had a cesarean, and so I did have a cesarean with him. So with her, I had the option to have a cesarean if I wanted to, or I could go for a VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean. So I chose to do the VBAC route. I was like, I would like to try and do a vaginal birth, mainly because cesarean, nothing wrong. I enjoyed my cesarean, if anything. It was very, very easy in comparison to how other people give birth. But I wanted to do the vaginal birth mainly because the recovery after cesarean, especially the second time around, it could be a lot more intense. And obviously with a 3-year-old already at home, I didn't think it would be easy. Obviously I wasn't against the idea if I needed to have a cesarean, but I would rather just sort of not have to deal with the not being able to move essentially for like a month or so because of a big giant wound on your stomach. So I agreed to have a VBAC, but because you are at have a high risk pregnancy, because of like where the scar is and stuff, I had asked to have a cesarean, an elective cesarean, at 41 weeks pregnant, because I didn't want to go to 42 weeks overdue. So I said if I get to 41 weeks I want to have a cesarean. So I had that booked in for, I don't know, I can't remember what date it was now. I can't remember when my due date was. But I had it booked in, and so I went for my appointment to just have like, it's like a pre-op appointment kind of thing where they just need to have everything they need from you. And the doctor said to me, I've moved your elective cesarean date to, I don't know, something ridiculous like the 21st of July or something. Bearing in mind, my due date, I think, was like the 1st or 2nd of July. So this was way too far in the future. Like 2 weeks is how long they let you go overdue for. So yeah, so they let you go overdue by 2 weeks, and they had booked me in for an elective cesarean like 3.5 weeks over, which was madness. And the midwife didn't seem to, or she was a nurse, not midwife. The nurse didn't really seem to understand what I was saying. I was like, that's way past. She was like, oh no, it's fine. I think they must have my notes wrong, basically. So she put me in for this wrong date, and I was also a bit irritated because I was like, well, you didn't ask me. You just she cancelled my elective date and changed it. And so therefore, when I was like, no, I want to stick to the original date, she was like, oh, we haven't got any dates left for then. And so basically, she booked me in for the 13th of July, I believe, which is my mum's birthday. And I was like, that's fine. It was way after my due date. I wanted to have it like 3 or 4 days before that. And sharing, you know, my baby sharing my mum's birthday is not the worst thing in the world. Like, it's quite sweet. But my biggest issue was on the 14th of July was Ellis's graduation from his nursery. And so I was really irritated to think that if I was giving birth, if I'm cesarean on the 13th, I wouldn't be able to go to see his graduation on the 14th, which was what I really wanted to do. So she booked me in for the 13th. And then all this click-clacking was going on, all this stuff was happening, and then this other head doctor comes marching in, and she comes in, she starts asking me all these questions about when my due date is, what's going on, when have I booked things for, and I can see there's something going on. And so what me and Sean have thought is perhaps there wasn't any space actually on the 13th of July either for cesareans. And so the big doctor midwife was getting panicked because obviously she was like, we have no space for this woman to have a cesarean, what are we going to do? So this doctor said to me, do you want a stretch and sweep? Which I've said no to every single time. With Ellis, I said no to them. And with her, I was very adamant I was never going to have one. So I said, no, I don't want one. And she said, why not? And I said, because I had examinations with Ellis when I was in labour, and I hated them. They hurt. They were really uncomfortable for me. And so I don't want to have any sort of unnecessary touching. So basically, and so she measured my bump and did all this stuff. And she said to me, I think you would really benefit from a stretch and sweep. And so I nearly said yes there and there, but thankfully Sean had my corner, and Sean said to me, if you don't want it, don't have one done, but do you think you can have gas and air when you have it? Because gas and air obviously helps keep your mind off pain and is very beneficial for me anyway. So he asked the doctor, can she have gas and air? The doctor said, yes, I can. And so I had gas and air with a stretch and sweep, which makes me so happy that Sean asked this question, which is sort of a positive birth aspect of things. If you are going into hospital pregnant, make sure your birth partner has your back. Don't let them just say yes or no to anything, because I nearly said yes, and I would have been really upset if I just said yes to no gas and air, because I really dislike stretch and sweeps. I think they're horrible. People don't mind them. I really don't like them. And so because Sean had my back, he knows I don't like them, he knows that gas and air can help, he asked the question and I got my gas and air. And thankfully the stretch and sweep showed me that I was already 2 centimetres dilated, which was perfect because it meant I wouldn't need to have a cesarean in 2 weeks' time. And obviously by doing the stretch and sweep, you can help speed things up, the beginning process up. I had that, and then I went to collect Ellis from nursery. And whilst we were waiting at the nursery door, I had a contraction, and I was just like, oh my God, it's literally been an hour since I had the stretch and sweep. Had to start working already. This is insane. So yeah, so on the drive home, I had a couple more contractions, but then it was sort of like, you know, is it contractions or is it just like, you know, false labour? Because that's a thing, the joys. So the biggest concern we had with my labour, bar the like labour part of it, was who would look after Ellis, because we live now an hour away from my parents and an hour away from Sean's parents, and we live 35 minutes from our hospital, which is perfect, just what you need. And so obviously with Ellis, if I need to rush into hospital, we need someone to be able to get to us quickly so we can then go to hospital. So because Sean's parents live a little bit of an easier route, because my parents live in London, so getting out of London to us now in Essex is a little bit more of a faff than Sean's parents, who still an hour away, but it's an easier drive. So we agreed that Sean's mum would come and look after Ellis whilst I was in labour. So obviously we text Sean's parents and we're like, Caroline, we think Caroline's in labour, so could you come now, essentially, because we were like, because they had like diversions on the road and stuff. So they came at around, I don't know, maybe 8 o'clock, 8 in the evening. Me and Sean's mum went for a walk to try and keep the contractions coming. They were very few and far between, so I wasn't sure if it was really labour or not, but I was just like, fingers crossed this is it, because it would be ideal to be able to get to the hospital at night time, because obviously then there won't be traffic on the road. Just carried on trying to be positive, bounced on my ball, all that sort of stuff, and then went to bed. And then I can't remember what time it was I woke up, but I woke up at some point with the feeling that I think I felt like a gush of water, but it wasn't so much a gush, it was more like a trickle of water. But so basically I went to the bathroom, and then I was up and down I couldn't sleep actually, let's be serious, I couldn't sleep because I constantly felt like I was wetting myself. Obviously my waters were leaking, constant feeling that I was like wetting myself, so I couldn't sleep. So about 4 in the morning, I came downstairs, and I was having contractions regularly. I wasn't really timing them, but I was listening to my her Positive Birth Freya app, which I highly recommend, breathing through. But it's very different to Ellis's labour, because for Ellis's labour I was sat downstairs watching TV for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours, just watching like comedy shows and things, trying to keep labour and contractions coming. Whereas this time around I didn't do any of that. I had fully prepped to watch loads of comedy shows and get my oxytocin going and getting all this stuff happening. But literally this time around I woke up and I had like contractions, and then we were like, well, it's 4 in the morning, should we just go to hospital now because we want to get ahead of the traffic, and you're having enough contractions to warrant going in? So we did. At 4 in the morning, Sean's mum was here to look after Ellis. We zipped down the M25 and got to the hospital. But I got to hospital, had an examination with gas and air, and I was 4 centimetres dilated, and I was sent up to the midwife-led unit. They had said to me I wasn't allowed to go to the midwife-led unit because I had a cesarean previously, but because of this I had already had meetings with midwives and stuff before when I was pregnant, and they had signed me off that I was healthy enough to go to the midwife-led unit. So if you are pregnant and you had a cesarean or a birth that has meant you are now a high-risk pregnancy this second time around, have a meeting with the head midwife. You can arrange them, or birth options or things like that are a thing, so you can choose where you give birth. Don't let midwives scare you into not letting you go into the midwife-led unit if that is what you want. So I was sent up to the midwife-led unit. I got into the birthing pool and I was there for a good few hours. Contractions just were coming and going as they pleased. I got checked again. I believe I was then I think I went up to 5 centimetres next time I was checked. I then had the injection in the thigh. I had that last time with Ellis, which sort of zoned me out for about an hour and a half. I laid on my front with my bum in the air the entire time whilst that did its thing and helped me rest, which helps engage the baby apparently. So I laid like that. I had another examination and they said I was only 6 centimetres, and so by that point the head midwife in the midwife-led unit said to me, I said, there's a few bits of water left in my body. So she popped that for me, which didn't hurt because I had gas and air. And she said, but unfortunately, because it has been a long time and you haven't progressed as much as we would have wanted, I had to go down to the labour ward, which was fine, but it wasn't ideal, but it was fine. Went down to the labour ward. So the little bit of water that the head midwife popped for me in the midwife-led unit was what was holding my labour back, basically. So she popped that, I went down to the labour ward, and then things went very quickly from there. I can't really remember the whole process of what happened between getting down there to the pushing phase. It's all a bit of a blur. I do know that 2 doctors came to speak to me about my cesarean options and my epidural options, but basically I think I was about 9 centimetres, and I was like, I need an epidural. I can't do this anymore. It hurt so much. It was intense. And by this point, my hypnobirthing breathing was out the window. I was just using gas and air and wasn't thinking at all about my breathing techniques. Probably not ideal, but that's what happened with me. And so I wanted an epidural. They called in the doctor man who does the epidural, and he, let's say, was rude. Sean did not get along with him whatsoever. He said to me, because the epidural is such obviously a big deal, you have to sit still for 20 minutes. So they put the injection in, and then you have to sit still for 20 minutes to let it do its thing, I guess. I don't know the science behind it. But because I was 9 centimetres dilated, my contractions were coming in thick and fast, and sitting down was so uncomfortable. I needed to be up on all fours, standing, walking, anything but sitting down. So I sat down and I had to jump up again because I had a contraction immediately. And then I managed to sit down and he had to sit all the way to the edge of the bed. And I was ready for the man to do the epidural. Sean went out to get the man and he had disappeared into thin air. No idea where he was. And because of this, you know, after like 10 seconds of me sat there, I was up on my feet saying, you know what, I'm not doing the epidural. I can't do this. Don't know where the man's gone. The man came marching in and Sean said, she was right there waiting for you. Where were you? He was like, I was in the hospital. And so Sean had a little bit of a go at him because he was annoyed that the man had just disappeared into thin air, which is fair, but at the same time, I'm so relieved that happened because otherwise I would have had an epidural and it would not have been the birth for me. So I'm glad I didn't have an epidural, but at the time it wasn't ideal. I could have had a cesarean if I wanted one by that point because I'd had a cesarean previously. I could request one, but I very nearly had a cesarean. I thought about it a lot. Sean was saying, just have a cesarean if you're not happy anymore. Just do it. You know what to expect. Let's just do it. But because they said to me I'm 9 centimeters, I sort of within my body was like, I'm already there. I'm at the point pretty much of pushing. So let's just do it. And so I made a fatal error here because I forgot that you can't have any more pain relief. So I asked for the thigh injection at this point, and you're not allowed to have the thigh injection when you are 9 centimeters because if you have the injection then it could go into the baby and the baby could be born with breathing difficulties. So I couldn't have a thigh injection. You couldn't have an epidural because I was, I didn't want one. Couldn't have a cesarean, and so there were no other options left for me. So I had to push this baby out with no pain relief. And I was sitting up on a bed, not in water, so it wasn't as relaxing as I would like it to have been. And I had to push a baby out with no pain relief. And let me tell you something, it is intense. Now, if you are due to give birth anytime soon, I would say stop watching my video now because I'm just going to talk about things a bit more intensely. So what I will say about the pushing phase is that I couldn't find a comfortable position. I was up on all fours, squatting down on the bed. That didn't work for me. The midwife asked me to turn around and be on my back. I was on my back, optimal position at all. I knew that, but I was in that position and that's what the position the midwife wanted me in. And so that's what I was in. And so I pretty much gave birth on my back and in stirrups, literally the worst position to give birth in, and what all the hypnobirthing people tell you not to do. But at that point I was beyond caring. I was like, just get this baby out of me now. And so I had to push, and I will tell you now, I really didn't like this part of giving birth. I know it's not it's not like if people rave about it. I don't think anyone likes it, but I turned to Sean at one point and I said I feel trapped because I felt like I was stuck between having to push this baby out that's not coming out and there's nothing I can do about it. I can't, there's literally nothing I can do here apart from having forceps or cesarean or push her out. And I didn't want forceps or cesarean, so I had to push her out, but I couldn't do it. And apparently there's a ridge inside your body. The baby has to go over the ridge. And I even said to the midwife, why is there a ridge? What a stupid design of that. Why is there a bump in the road that baby's got to get over? I think in total I was pushing for about an hour and a half, I think. And thankfully they said to me, oh, the head is out. And I was like, oh great, the head is out. And I thought that when the head was out, you then had to do more of a push. I thought the shoulders were the hard thing to get out. I thought you get the head out, and then you had to be in pushing for hours on end to get the shoulders out. Nope, the head was out, the baby was out. It was the biggest shock to me ever. When they handed the baby to me, I was in so much shock. I could not believe I had done it. Oh, I couldn't believe I had done it. I couldn't believe I'd pushed a baby out of me. I couldn't believe that they were handing me a child. It was all of a sudden just, she was there. And when people say that, you think, what does that even mean? And it means that the baby will just be there. You'll be pushing and all of a sudden they'll be handing a baby to you. There was just no in between, no buffering. Then she arrived and she weighed £8.5. and Ellis weighed 8 pounds too, so she's a little bit heavier than Ellis was, but she's narrower than Ellis was, because when I put clothes on her, they just didn't fit at all, whereas Ellis, they were a bit snugger around the waist. But yeah, that's my birth story. And then recovery afterwards, I didn't like one bit. I found it easier recovering from a cesarean than I did this birth. People say to me that, oh, this recovering from a vaginal birth is easier than a cesarean. So therefore I had that in mind, and it wasn't the case for me. And I really struggled for about 3 days after giving birth to her. I had a really tough time. You can't sit down, felt so uncomfortable, nothing felt right. It was a horrible feeling. But it only lasted 3 days, and then it was fine. So that was my relief, as opposed to a cesarean, which obviously is a little bit longer. But yeah, that was it. It was very quick, short. So we did plan on vlogging my birth, but because it went from like in the birth pool to in the labour ward to the baby was here, and everything happened really quickly, we vlogged like nothing. But yeah, so that's my birth story. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed meeting Quinn at long last. It's been a while. And I will see you in my next video.